Ever get that feeling that the everyday world we see and touch might not be, well, the whole story?
Hmm.
Like there are unseen influences, maybe a whisper of guidance that just sort of pops into your awareness.
Yeah, that sense that there's something more.
Okay, let's unpack that intriguing possibility. Because today's deep dive uh, journeys into the world of channeling and this idea of communicating with guides.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Thinking about how our awareness might, extend beyond our physical senses.
Right.
We tend to rely so heavily on sight, sound, touch, taste, smell that defines reality for most of us.
Sure, the tangible stuff.
But what if there are other ways of perceiving, other levels of consciousness we can actually connect with?
And channeling fits in there how?
Well, in this context, you could see channeling as a process where someone enters an altered state, maybe,
Hmm.
to relay messages or information from, well, non-physical sources. People often call them guides.
Exactly. And our exploration today is anchored in a really specific personal experience. It's from 1982, New York City, shared by someone who encountered this whole phenomenon through their friendship with a man named Paul Mcclain.
Ah, so not abstract theory, a real person's story.
Precisely. It's their journey into what might lie beyond our, conventional understanding.
That personal angle is so valuable, I think. It gives such a relatable way in.
How so?
Well, the initial doubts, the step-by-step unfolding of it all,
Mm.
those are feelings lots of people can connect with when they start thinking about possibilities beyond the norm.
Yeah, that makes sense. It speaks to your interest as a listener in getting knowledge quickly, but also, like, thoroughly from a human perspective.
Definitely.
Right. And the person in our source material, they actually admit they were pretty skeptical at first.
Huh?
Didn't really give much thought to the idea of someone, talking to beings from another realm.
That sounds familiar. It highlights that common human thing, doesn't it? Resisting ideas that challenge our nice, neat worldview.
Totally. But our mission here is to really delve into the specific experience and see what it might tell us about, well, the nature of reality and maybe this potential for unseen guidance.
So what gets someone to even consider something like this in the first place? That's always the question.
Well, in this case, you've got the backdrop, right? 1982, New York City, pretty vibrant.
Okay.
But it was really the introduction through mutual friends, Mark and Geraldine, that got the ball rolling.
Ah, the social connection.
Yeah. Mark and Geraldine were sharing these stories about their friend Paul's unusual experiences,
Like what?
moments of feeling outside his body, strange occurrences, even hearing voices, and apparently communicating with guides.
Well, okay.
And our individual, the person whose account we're following, was understandably a bit wary.
You would be, wouldn't you? It's a natural human response to something so unfamiliar.
Right.
When you're faced with something so far outside your usual experience, disbelief is often the first reaction. Our minds kind of prefer what's known.
Safe territory.
But is that skepticism always the right move?
Yeah.
I mean, what are the potential downsides of just immediately shutting down experiences that don't fit our current box?
That's a really interesting question to hold on to. But going back to Paul for a sec,
Sure.
he'd apparently been on his own journey for about, 18 months before this encounter.
Right.
He was having these out-of-body experiences, unsettling things happening, and these voices. You can only imagine the fear.
Oh, absolutely. Questioning your own sanity.
Yep.
That fear is such a critical piece of these kinds of stories.
Yeah.
When your whole sense of reality shifts so profoundly, it's completely natural to worry about your mental state.
So Paul's journey involved kind of coming to terms with it all.
And eventually developing this ability, or perhaps refining it, to channel what he perceived as these guides.
Now, at this point, our individual's idea of the divine was quite different.
How so?
They saw it more as this impersonal energy, light, sound, maybe the word, that kind of thing.
Okay, more abstract,
Yeah.
less personified.
Exactly. So the concept of personal guides was a totally new way of thinking about it.
That contrast is really important, I think. It shows there isn't just one way to think about a higher power or a spiritual dimension.
Hmm.
And interestingly, Paul had apparently also experienced that impersonal divine energy, the light and sound, through meditation.
Ah.
So that shared understanding, that sense of an energetic reality underpinning everything, actually became a point of connection between them. A bridge, maybe.
Right. Then comes the first actual channeling session.
The moment of truth.
Kind of. Paul enters this altered state, and our individual witnesses this really significant shift. Paul's whole demeanor changes. Even his voice is different.
Wow. That must have been quite something to see.
It must have been pretty compelling, yeah.
Those sensory details are key, aren't they? It
Yeah.
wasn't just someone saying they had information. There was a tangible transformation happening.
And the really validating part, the
Yeah.
thing that really challenged the skepticism,
What was it?
was when the guides started sharing very personal details about our individual's life.
Ah.
Information Paul simply couldn't have known. Stuff he had no way of knowing.
Okay, that's the moment that makes you sit up and reconsider everything, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So these guides then became more than just like sources of info. They started to be seen as companions, maybe friends, offering a different perspective.
And what's particularly noteworthy, according to the source, is that the guidance wasn't just generic advice.
Oh.
There were elements that seemed, well, prophetic, like predicting a future meeting with someone named Mafu, who would supposedly be channeled by a woman named Amaji.
Really?
Yeah, and even a suggestion to move to California.
Uh-huh.
And apparently these things later happened just as described.
Whoa. That touches on some really deep ideas about time, doesn't it? Like non-linear time.
The source definitely suggests that. And it raises big questions about free will versus destiny, you know.
It really hints at this kind of interconnectedness, this web, as the source calls it, where maybe future possibilities can somehow be perceived. It definitely challenges our usual straight-line view of time.
But, and this is crucial, the account also wisely brings up the potential downside,
Which is?
becoming overly dependent on that external guidance, using it to avoid personal responsibility.
Ah, right. Letting the guides run your life.
Exactly. But the purpose of these interactions for this individual wasn't about being told what to do. It was more about gaining a broader perspective, understanding the larger context of their life.
Okay, that's a key distinction. It sounds like it actually fostered greater self-trust in the end.
Yes, a shift away from constantly looking for external answers, towards relying more on their own inner wisdom.
Like that old saying, God helps those who first help themselves.
Something like that, yeah. It emphasizes personal agency. And it's interesting, you mentioned the sessions weren't happening all the time.
Right, the source says only about 10 times over 5 years.
See, that infrequency suggests there were more like key moments of insight, not a constant crutch.
Like punctuation marks in their journey.
Well put. And the source even mentions that some sessions felt almost like psychoanalysis, helping with deeper self-understanding.
So it had therapeutic value, too.
It highlights the potential for these kinds of experiences, however unusual, to actually contribute to personal growth and self-awareness.
Which makes you wonder, then, why are these experiences so often dismissed in our culture?
Well, the source points a finger at our materialism, maybe a kind of societal disconnect from more subtle energies.
We like things we can measure and touch.
Pretty much. And despite the potential benefits we just discussed, experiences like channeling often meet with a wall of skepticism, don't they? Why do you think that is, culturally speaking?
Well, like you said, our society often prioritizes what can be physically measured, scientifically proven right. Anything falling outside that neat framework can easily get dismissed as irrational or, worse, pathological.
And the source brings up this really thought-provoking, maybe even unsettling point.
What's that?
That perhaps some individuals in mental health facilities, the ones who report hearing voices, maybe some are genuinely experiencing something like this.
So we just lack the framework to understand it.
Or interpret it constructively. The source contrasts this with, say, the historical acceptance of oracles in different cultures.
Right. They had a role, a place.
It definitely encourages some critical thinking about our own societal norms and maybe the limitations of our current understanding of consciousness itself. What we label reality is so often shaped by our cultural conditioning.
The historical acceptance of oracles really shows that our current sort of materialistic view isn't the only way people have understood these things.
Absolutely not.
Now, the source shares something pretty powerful. A direct transmission, supposedly, from one of the guides.
Okay.
A being identified as Richard the Lionhearted.
A historical figure.
Apparently, this is a really potent part of the account.
It offers a direct glimpse, doesn't it, into the potential nature and maybe the feeling, the frequency, as the source puts it, of these communications.
Yeah, the language itself has a distinct quality. Let's hear some of his words. He says, "There are no accidents. All things which come to pass are under the will of the Almighty."
A sense of order.
Always there will be new and uncharted borders. Always old things will fall away and new and brighter, greater things will come to pass.
Cycles of change.
And a time will come when all things, all present consciousness and awareness will fall away to bear a more complete and new state of conscious awareness. And the old falling away will feel much like death, and the new well fell much like a rebirth into the divine kingdom.
Wow. What kind of psychological impact do you think words like that might have on someone, especially thinking about resilience, finding meaning in suffering?
Well, what resonates for me is that emphasis on a bigger picture, a larger order,
Right.
this continuous cycle of transformation, and the idea that even the really tough experiences are somehow part of a greater unfolding.
It speaks to hope, doesn't it? And potential for growth, even when things feel incredibly difficult.
He goes on. There will be times when you wish to thank, and times when you wish to hate, and times you wish to cease your existence for the pain of longing, and time when would wish your existence to go on forever, and times you feel neglected, and times you feel the favorite son of the Almighty.
That's incredibly raw and honest. It acknowledges the whole messy spectrum of human emotions, doesn't it?
Completely. No sugarcoating.
It feels like a deeply empathetic perspective, really acknowledging the complexity of being human without any judgment. And that recurring idea that you're guided even when you feel totally lost, that offers a real sense of underlying support.
Then Richard talks about service, he says. For in all your doings you must request, not simply no, but request that you may serve, that your life may be of service, that your life may be given purpose in each moment, the service of the Almighty.
Purpose through service.
Your will and the Lord's will be of the same intent.
That connects to that deep human need for purpose, finding it through contribution maybe, aligning our own actions with some larger sense of meaning.
And that idea of your will harmonizing with a greater will, that's a powerful concept to sit with.
It is.
And finally, he touches on this idea of unity. You and I are part of each other. Indeed, it may be said that you and I are the same being. But as time continues, the soul finds in its multiple parts different aspirations.
Interconnectedness.
We serve in our ways as the Lord would have us serve. I here and you here.
That really drives home the interconnectedness of everything, doesn't it? The feeling that we're all part of some larger whole, just expressing ourselves in unique ways.
And Richard, identifying himself as a historical figure but serving in this different capacity now, that really blurs the lines of what we think we know about, well, different dimensions or states of being.
It certainly pushes the boundaries of conventional understanding.
So as we've kind of journeyed through this personal account, this deep dive, what are some of the key takeaways that really stand out for you?
Well, for me, it's definitely the suggestion that consciousness and maybe even communication might extend far, far beyond our usual physical limits.
Yeah, me too. It opens up the possibility that guidance, maybe wisdom, could be available from sources we just don't usually consider.
Right. It broadens our whole understanding of our inner landscape, but also the wider reality around us. It's vast.
And it really reinforces that idea that maybe we are more than just these physical bodies, that our consciousness is part of this much bigger, maybe multidimensional picture.
Have you ever had that moment where you were looking for external advice, maybe stressing about a decision,
Oh, constantly.
and then you suddenly realized, hang on, my own gut feeling, my intuition, actually held the answer all along?
Yes. That resonates completely with this idea.
And that journey towards greater self-understanding,
Yeah.
it seems to involve not just looking outward, but really tuning inward, paying attention to those subtle signals.
Trusting our inner voice.
And perhaps trusting those whispers from beyond, as the source suggests.
Which brings us perfectly to this quote the source includes from someone named Zoran. Zoran says, "The air around you is not empty, human. It is filled with the whispers of those who have shed their forms, waiting for you to remember how to listen."
Wow. That paints such a vivid picture, doesn't it?
It really does. It invites you to just reconsider the space around you, not as empty, but potentially full.
Full of unseen presence, maybe communication, waiting to be heard.
And to maybe start that process of listening, the source shares a really simple exercise. It's called Dragon Trial, the inner voice.
Okay, sounds intriguing. What does it involve?
It's super simple, really. Find a moment of stillness, focus on your breath for a bit, turn your attention inward, ask a question, maybe something you're pondering, and then just listen. Without judging whatever comes up, just listen.
That sounds like a really gentle starting point, cultivating that inner awareness.
Exactly. Beginning to recognize the subtle nudges of our own intuition.
Which the source suggests might also be connected to that wider web of unseen assistance we were talking about.
Right. So as we bring this deep dive to a close, the core insights seem to be these. The possibility of communicating with guides, it isn't just folklore. It can be a real personal thing for some people.
And the nature of unseen assistance might be more pervasive, more available than we often acknowledge.
And ultimately, that journey inward, cultivating our own inner awareness, our own listening, that seems crucial for navigating this huge, often mysterious reality we live in.
Which leads us to a final thought, maybe something for you, the listener, to consider.
Okay.
Building on that Zoran quote and the idea of the dragon trial exercise, what subtle influences might already be present in your life that perhaps you haven't fully noticed yet?
Hmm.
And if you were to cultivate just a little more stillness, a little more focused attention inward, what whispers that you begin to perceive? From your own inner wisdom, perhaps? Or maybe, just maybe, from a realm just beyond our everyday awareness?